Good morning. Welcome to the early line here on SportsGrid. March Madness is upon us. What a day it was yesterday. I'm Craig Mish, in for Donnie Rightside. Of course, Joe Ranieri here with me as well. We got a great look at some monster upsets in the NCAA Tournament. Some great games, including an overtime one, which we'll tell you all about. Plenty to get to here on today's show. We got Kevin Walsh in the house, Coach Young as well, to preview some college basketball, Tom Vecchio for some baseball. But where would we begin without some caffeinated Joe?
Well, Craig, when you've been handicapping as long as we have, you learn to take your lumps and admit when you were wrong. That's the only way you can actually learn in life here. And I was wrong yesterday. I was wrong about Wisconsin. I was wrong about VCU. And I tell you why I was wrong is because we were told that Cinderella was dead. We were told that the mid-majors could no longer hang with the big boys in this new transfer portal NIL era. But day one of that tournament just slapped the Bruce Pearls of the world right in the mouth. And let's start with Greg Gard of Wisconsin, shall we? Who once again got bounced out for the 7th straight tournament before the first weekend was even over. And you gotta love High Point's head coach, Flynn Clayman, who went, they said we didn't play nobody. Well, we played somebody now, and this is exactly the kind of sentiment and the exact kind of criticism that Miami of Ohio received. Even though they went 31-0 during the regular season, all we kept hearing about is, well, who did they play? Well, shocker, it turns out that, winning, no matter who you're playing against, actually matters, and it matters especially heading into March Madness. And when you look at VCU last night, down by as many as 19 points in that second half, and they clawed the way back to beat North Carolina, one of the Blue Bloods, coming back in overtime to win that game, proving once again, Craig, that, maybe a little bit of heart, a little bit of conditioning, and a whole lot of chip on your shoulder actually means something in March. And how about Siena? What'd they do to Duke? Duke just thought they could show up and win the game. Turns out they got quite the scare from number 16, the Siena Saints here. But Siena proved that they, in fact, belonged on that same court with Duke. So what we're watching right now is a brand new era of college basketball. And I think we need to start looking at these tournament games moving forward from an NIL lens, because there is only a finite amount of NIL money that can go around, even though some teams seem to find more than others. That means you've got a ton of incredibly talented, experienced players who had to settle for less money and head to a mid-major because they weren't expected to make the team and get that 6 or 7 figure deal. You've got a lot of kids on these mid-major teams with a giant, and I mean giant, chip on their shoulder. So where do we go from here? Well, let's keep that in mind here today, Craig, as we've got a Kentucky team with a reported $22 million payroll that's going to be taking on a Santa Clara team with a fraction of that they can pay their players. They're out for revenge. They're out for blood. Huge chip on their shoulder. And I, for one, am happy that the mid-majors are back. Do not sleep on them today, because you got Miami of Ohio, you got the Santa Claras of the world, and they are angry here, Craig. So I love it. Let the madness continue to roll on here today, my man.
Yeah, we needed upsets. We got them yesterday, and especially our first overtime game of the NCAA tournament coming down to North Carolina making free throws at the end of a game, which simply could have pushed it maybe to another overtime. We'll get into that specifically, what happened at the end of the game there. All right, the early lineup. Let's talk about things happening in your neck of the woods, and we'll begin with the NBA and Cade Cunningham. So there's some good news and there's some bad news. We'll start with the good news. It looks like Cade Cunningham's going to play again this season. The bad news is that he's been diagnosed with a mild left lung pneumothorax and will miss 8 games and then be reevaluated in 2 weeks. Joe, the playoffs begin April 18th. If my math is correct, if all goes well, the Pistons will have Cade Cunningham back for those playoffs. Now, what he will look like in the first round remains to be seen, but this is why the regular season, Joe, does mean something, because Detroit is going to get a back-end team in the East to begin.
Yes, and it does. And it's just a very strange situation, unfortunate situation for Cade Cunningham in Detroit. But the good news is, if you keep playing teams like the Washington Wizards, well, you're not going to need Cade Cunningham to win those games like they did last night. So hopefully, though, he is back sooner rather than later, because why they might be the number one seed in the East and the favorite, they're going to need Cade Cunningham if they're going to make a run at this serious, for a championship run, that is.
Meanwhile, Major League Baseball reaping the benefits of the World Baseball Classic. The commissioner, Rob Manfred, said the growing success of the WBC is inspiring some discussions about a potential mid-season tournament for the league, Joe. No word yet what this would look like or if they'll even pull it off. But the other part of this yesterday, it was reported by Fox that the ratings for the World Baseball Classic, Joe, for the first time outdid the NBA Finals, moving baseball ahead of basketball. How about that?
Greg, I've been screaming it now since the tournament started. I don't know why we don't do what the NHL did with the Four Nations and make it right smack in the middle of the season. Forget the All-Star game. Give me more of this. Figure out how to do that once every, 3 or 4 years. And I think baseball fans would be more than happy to get that instead of whatever that All-Star game has morphed into these days.
The midseason classic, I think they still call it that. The fall classic is the World Series, of course, and that's where we watch this young kid, Trey Savage, come alive for the Toronto Blue Jays, Joe. But unfortunately, the beginning of his season has been put to bed. He's got a shoulder impingement. I guess there was a reason why he was coming along slow in spring training, Joe. We really didn't. I don't think we got the full story until yesterday. Right shoulder impingement. We're not going to see him for a while. He's placed on the 15-day IL, and baseball and shoulders, Joe, I don't know, like a month, 2 months, could be longer.
Yeah, it could very well be longer. But again, this kid is so young and he is so talented that it's more important to make sure that he is 100% before we start pushing him along here. But I think Toronto understands the situation. They needed him to try to make a world championship run last year. But I think if we don't see him until June, I don't know that anybody's going to complain about that.
Yeah, not a lot of innings on his shoulder or arm last year, too. Also, baseball announced Jurickson Profar not going to play this season. They upheld his 162-game suspension. As far as college basketball is concerned, as Joe mentioned at the top of the show, the biggest upset, High Point University. The 12 does beat the 5. As Joe said, we were told going into this tournament, the 12s don't beat the 5s anymore. Okay, I guess they do. High Point picks up the win. Duke also survives a major scare from Siena, as Joe mentioned, and they win as well. But Joe, one of the other stories in the NCAA tournament, how about the first win in the Big Dance for Vanderbilt since 2012? Tyler Tanner, 26 points to beat McNeese.
Yeah, you gotta love that, right? I mean, Vandy gets it done. A lot of people thought that Vandy, much like Nebraska, might continue to lose and never win a game in the tournament. But yep, they both got it done, both Vanderbilt and Nebraska yesterday. So kudos to them. And Vandy might still have a little left in the tank. Everyone thought they might have, they had nothing left after beating Florida and then losing to Arkansas. But turns out they got plenty left in the tank.
Same with Texas, having to get in the play-in game, winning that one, and then defeating BYU as well. We'll be back with more on this edition of The Early Line, on this Friday edition of March Madness right after this. Welcome back to the early line here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mission for Donnie Rightside. Joe Ranieri is back in the house with his little soiree in New York City, taking some time to have some fun, but also host from our studios there. He'll be back in South Florida this weekend. Joe, great to be with you, by the way, the last couple days here on the show, talking some college hoops with you. So I think you pretty much laid it very eloquently early in the show. We go into these NCAA tournaments not knowing what to expect, sometimes thinking big upsets, sometimes thinking not. I was riding in the car yesterday. This is a great story with my son. And, a couple of, he's never done a bracket like this before. He's 13. And he says to me after he filled out the bracket, like, how did you know that High Point could beat Wisconsin? How did you know, why did you take VCU? And I said, I really don't care, Joe, what anyone is telling us. The heart and the front and the names on the front of these jerseys, things can just happen in the NCAA tournament. And until I am done doing this, like handicapping games, breaking down sports, I'm still going to bet on those underdogs. I know we haven't seen it the last couple of years, but you said it yourself. In sports betting and in life, you have to have the ability to change. And so the question that I would have for you, Joe, is that after watching yesterday, as we go through these games, are you on board with change? So let's start and talk about some of these games today. Santa Clara takes on Kentucky, and the Wildcats are 3.5-point favorites. If all the favorites had won yesterday, you may have looked at it and just said, Kentucky, as you said, NIL money coming in over $20 million. Easy win for them, total 158.5. But I, like you, even though my brackets are filled, am starting to think maybe we are going to get more of those upsets today.
Well, it's one thing you have to take away. I mean, the reality is what happened yesterday is not going to have a whole lot of bearing on what happens with these matchups here today. But there is a theme, I think, that we need to consider that we haven't had in years past. And that is, again, in this game, you've got a Kentucky team with a reported $22 million they are paying their players. Now, $22 million, you would think, right, that they were 31-0 during the regular season, that they'd be unbeatable with that kind of. No, they aren't. They went 4-6 in their last 10 games. They lost to Georgia. They lost to Auburn. They lost to A&M. They only beat LSU at home, by the way, by 5. And in fact, outside of Rupp Arena, they haven't been great at all this season. That's $22 million. Now enter Santa Clara, who, I mean, pennies on the dollar do they pay their players compared to what Kentucky has got. And yet, this line opened up 3.5, 4, Craig, and all I am seeing is Santa Clara money hitting the board. The public loves Kentucky. I'm in this spot all over the dog. I think Santa Clara has shown that they are more than capable of hanging with the big boys here.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is going to be a great game. Now, on the flip side, we have Akron, another one of those teams, mid-major from Ohio in the NCAA tournament, like Miami, Ohio. Not as good as Miami, Ohio going into the regular season, but all of a sudden, here comes some steam for another 12-5 matchup. Texas Tech minus 7.5, total 156.5. This game is one of the first games, Joe, on the board. In fact, I'll be on the air while this game goes off later today. So, live dog here. I know Texas Tech far better than Akron during the regular season. They were really good. Is this a potential upset, you think, today?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. This is another one, right, where it appears the public is all over Akron in this spot. Why? Well, they beat Miami of Ohio. They were, for most of the year, I think, anyway, the better team in the MAC conference, even though Miami of Ohio got all the headlines. Very versatile team, can beat you in a number of different ways. And then you have Texas Tech, who unfortunately lost one of the top 5 players in the country this season in Toppin. And without him, they went 3-3 to end the season. In fact, they've lost their last 3 games. And I think if anything we want to pull away from yesterday, Craig, VCU has now won, 16 of their last 17 games here. High Point also has rattled off a ridiculous amount of wins. Winning matters, especially heading into the tournament. And right now, Akron is winning, and they have been for a while. You know who's not? Texas Tech. It's kind of, they should win Texas Tech, but there is no way I would be laying this number with them given their current state of affairs.
I would agree. The one thing that you said that, yesterday doesn't portend to today, I do believe that to be true, but you can be rest assured in that locker room today, Siena versus Duke is being shown to the University of Arizona today. The Arizona, they're 30.5-point favorites. I think those number one seeds today are going to roll. I don't think that they're going to be taken lightly because you have some tape as to what you saw yesterday from Siena. Do not let the other team get hot. That being said, it is LIU, a team I know nothing about. 30.5-point favorites today for the Wildcats.
Well, I'll tell you this. LIU did play this season 2 tournament teams. One of them was Illinois, and the other one was Georgia. They gave up 98 to Illinois and 89 to Georgia. That means we could very well have 100 points on the board from Arizona in this game. So instead of laying that ridiculous number, I think the over is where the value is. I am sure LIU is going to be able to score enough points here, but I know Arizona is going to score enough to be able to not ask LIU to do a whole lot to get this up and over the 150, 151.5 that we have.
14 versus 3. Wright State versus Virginia. Virginia is, look, they're still a lower scoring team in college basketball, but they're not that team that puts up 40 or 50 anymore, as you used to remember. They're 17.5-point favorites against Wright State. This game is Friday, 1:50 Eastern. It's just really hard for me to get Virginia's big upset a few years ago out of my mind, Joe. That's the one thing I just keep going back to is how that ended up happening. They should win today, but I don't know. I just don't like laying points with this team.
No, I won't be laying those points with this team. I'm with you. I think Wright State out of the Horizon League has got a shot at keeping this close.
We'll take a quick break here on the early line. We've got some games we still have yet to review, so we'll get to those. And we'll also check in on some college hoops with Coach Young later in the show and Kevin Walsh. You're watching the early line on SportsGrid. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the early line here on Sports Grid. What is everybody talking about this morning as they tune us in, stream us, watch us, as they say, consume the show? It's not for me. It's not for Joe. It's to watch this High Point head coach who I'd never heard of before. His name is Flynn Clayman. We'll get to him in a second. High Point beats Wisconsin 83-82. It's the biggest upset in the NCAA tournament in a couple of years, as not only does the 12 beat the 5, but High Point was at least 10-point favorites going into this game. So naturally, Flynn Clayman, feeling like there was a chip on his shoulder for his High Point squad, talked about the win after the game.
Couldn't be more proud of this team. In the summer, when we get those shot tracker numbers back, and there's 63 schools in the country that have it, and we're number 1 every week in shots taken, they could talk about whatever we have, but we're working. We're selfless. And it's pretty obvious to me that something needs to be done about this non-conference scheduling. High Point and Miami, Ohio are 2-0 in quad 1 games. We couldn't get games. They couldn't get games. Akron couldn't get games. UNCW couldn't get games. Belmont couldn't get games. We won 22 of our last 23 games, and we didn't move up 1 spot in the metrics. Not 1. We won 22 of our 23. We've won 25 games by double digits. That team right there is a fantastic team that beat 5 top 10 teams. If we can get games like this on neutral courts and some home games, I think we'd know who's really the best teams. I'm proud of these dudes, and we're not just here to win 1 game, we're here to get to the Sweet 16.
First of all, congratulations at High Point. They played a terrific game, hit some unbelievable shots, and that's the heartache that comes with this tournament, is that the team plays exceptionally well, and you get sent home when you don't take care of things you need to take care of. But extremely proud of my group to get us to this point. They've grown immensely. These 3 guys to my right have come a long, long ways, both in their play, but also in their leadership and their ability to handle adversity and grow. Extremely proud of them. As I told them in the locker room, the worst part is we don't get to go to practice again together. And how this group has grown together, they'll have something. Today sucks. Today stings. But they'll look back and how far they've come and what they've accomplished this year together, and do that with a lot of pride with the bonds that they've formed over the past 6 months.
Everybody is talking about High Point, Joe, as they should be, because that is the story today. But there is a flip side to that, which is that Wisconsin hasn't won a game in the NCAA tournament since 2017. Greg Gard has been the head coach of Wisconsin all the way back. He's 1-7 in his last 8 tournament tries. So naturally, all the credit does go to High Point. But if you are Wisconsin and you go to that school and you're a student and you're heading toward the tournament next year, I don't know how you can have confidence. I just got to be honest.
You can't. That's the problem, right? And that's it. You know, you are what your record says you are, right, Craig? Ultimately, at the end of the day, and when it comes to tournament play, Greg Gard, Wisconsin, yeah, you can't make it out of the first weekend, and that is not. You know, that's an issue now. We've had enough of a sample size, Craig, where we got to go, yeah, there's something lacking with this program right now.
Yeah, it has to be, especially considering they finished the regular season so strong. TCU did beat Ohio State. It was one of the early games yesterday, 66-64. They end in a thriller, and they win that one and basically have a chance now to move on and see how far they can get. They'll play again tomorrow. Louisville also holds off a late comeback by USF, so I got that pick wrong, clearly. Louisville wins 83-79. Cardinal led throughout the game, but USF did make a game of it, but then in the end ended up taking over. But the big story yesterday appeared to be the percolating massive upset with Siena taking Duke to the brink, 71-65. Here is Jerry. We don't have time to get to Jerry McNamara, so I'll get to Joe Ranieri instead. Siena, did you think Siena was going to win this game, Joe, at any point? I just was, honestly, I was driving. I was just checking the score. I'm like, when is Duke going to go up? When are they going to go up? It took a while in this one.
Yeah, no, it did. And listen, the Duke players admitted it after the game, saying, yeah, if we're being honest, we really never sweated it. We thought we were just going to win. And Siena comes out there and smacks him in the face and sets a record, too, by the way, for the largest halftime lead over a #1 seed in tournament history. That's how big a lead that was.
All right, we're going to have some big lead changes, I think, coming up later today. We'll preview Utah State, Villanova, also Miami, Ohio, back on the court against Tennessee. You're watching the early line here on SportsGrid. Well, if you missed the late games in the NCAA tournament, I'm going to be honest with you, you didn't miss much. Lots of blowouts after things went dark last night, 9 p.m. Eastern. One of those blowouts was Arkansas taking care of business against Hawaii. Darius Acuff with another big game, one of the potential players of the year in college basketball. Here is Calipari after a near 40-point win over Hawaii. Hawaii did come back to make it a little bit closer, but as Calipari said, team effort to get the win.
What I was most happy with, we end up with 26 assists. We pass the ball to each other. We create shots for each other. Makes us pretty good. The start of the game, we talked about it, and we've been talking about it for the last month. First 5 minutes. Now, the first 5 minutes could be 15-15, but you were ready to play, and the other team played well too. Today, they missed some shots, and then they started making shots. You got to give them credit. They did not quit. Hawaii just kept playing. And all of a sudden, I'm looking up, it's 15, but then we make a play or two. These two, Malik Ewan is showing, he's basically telling on himself of this is how good I am. And the way he chased down balls with unbelievable energy. And then you saw TB. And the great news is you saw him where he wasn't making shots. How'd he look? And he didn't make shots, and you're looking at him like, holy cow. And that's what I just keep trying to tell him. If you make them, great. If you don't, just do all the other things you do. So that was a good start for us. Always worried about the first game. Hard game for everybody playing.
Joe, I'll defer to you with Arkansas. That's about as impressive as a win as you're going to have in the NCAA tournament. Hawaii was no slouch. They had a great end to their season, even in their tournament, but Arkansas just easily won that game last night.
Yeah, and I mean the difference in athleticism was very noticeable in there, and Arkansas did their thing. You know, again, there is a lot of parity, Craig, in this year's college basketball. So, you know, kind of level a playing field for the mid-majors, but there are still, that cut above. And Arkansas right now at Acuff Jr. is just one of those teams that's a cut above.
Yeah, we'll talk about it again later in the show, but maybe the most impressive performance also happened while a lot of you probably were sleeping, and I wouldn't blame you. St. Louis put up 102 last night against Georgia as they advance to the next round as well. All right, so let's get to some of the Friday matchups here, Joe, and then we'll check in with Tom Vecchio on some baseball, and then we'll chop it up with some more hoops with Kevin and Coach Young. We've got Friday 4:10 p.m. Eastern, so that game is later today. Generally, for those of you who are watching the NCAA tournament, maybe for the first time, second time, is that they play all these games between noon and like 5. Then there's like a break, and then they start up the night games as well. So Utah State takes on Villanova, and as you can see, the odds makers are telling us flip your coin on this one in the 9 versus 8 matchup. So this is like a conference matchup here, Joe. We're going to be talking about that after the game. But what do you make of this matchup before the game between Villanova and Utah State?
Well, we're seeing a ton of movement towards Villanova. This seems to be a split in the marketplace there, Craig, because the public seems to love Utah State, but the line keeps moving towards Villanova at this one. So it feels like a coin flip game for sure. But, both of these teams had plenty of opportunities against quad 1 teams. In fact, I think Utah State went 4-4, and I believe Villanova went 2-6 against the better competition. So what does that mean? That likely means it's going to come down with these two teams is who hits the shots from the outside. Villanova's the better defensive team here. Something tells me defense may travel, and Villanova could represent the Big East moving on. We know Mountain West teams have not been good picks over the years in March Madness.
Hard to believe a marquee game, Joe, could be played at 4:25 Eastern with one team getting 11.5 points, but it will be one of the most watched games on Friday. Miami, Ohio, taking on Tennessee, the SEC versus that team that rolled through the regular season undefeated, and the odds makers are once again showing no love to Miami, Ohio. Now, the people who are betting these games have bet this down to 10.5. I would guess it'll close at 10 or maybe even lower because there is a lot of support for Miami, Ohio, total of 148.5. Now, Tennessee is a far better opponent than SMU. I'm going to start with that here, Joe. But that being said, does Miami, Ohio have another upset in them today?
Well, upset remains to be seen, but I can tell you this. I mean, if Tennessee does what Duke did yesterday and thinks they're just going to show up and win this game, then yes, the upset is very much alive well because Tennessee is not coming back if they're down that many points at the break to Miami of Ohio. But I think Miami of Ohio is more than capable of being able to, when you shoot that many threes and you shoot them as well as they do, Greg, they're getting double digits. I think they can keep it within double digits here. And I would say upset depends on what we see in the first half, but I would certainly take the points and not lay them here.
Okay, tough matchup Friday, 6:50 Eastern. Before that break, as I mentioned, Iowa takes on Clemson. Okay, tough one here for me. Hawkeyes 2.5-point favorites. Clemson has been no stranger to getting upset in the NCAA tournament, but they are the dogs here. And what you're going to find, Joe, is the lowest total on the board today in a tournament game of 130.5. So shocking that Iowa football and Iowa basketball playing in low-scoring, boring games. Is that the case today?
Yeah, it feels like we're going to get a safety and 2 field goals, and that's about all. This is going to be a 6-3 game when it's all said and done. Clemson, big injury to Carter Welling there in the ACC tournament. He was their starting forward. He was one of their better scorers, better rebounders. He is out. And for Iowa, it's all about Bennett Sturtz. He's a stud. The guy averages 20, 21 points a game for Iowa. Neither of these teams are in a rush to run up and down the court. So I don't mind the under, but it feels like this is a good shot for Iowa to be able to get one and advance here for Ben McCollum, and I think they will.
All right, so another team from Florida trying to avoid getting knocked out of the tournament, but it's going to be an uphill battle for the UCF Knights. They're in the tournament this year against UCLA. The one thing I can tell you about UCLA, Joe, is that this is a favorite of 5.5 points that can win by 30 and lose by 30. It's been that kind of year for the Bruins. Very strange team. Total 152.5. Do you get the sense that UCLA shows up for this one, or is it closer than the line would indicate?
Listen, it's Jekyll and Hyde here with UCF. Which version of this team shows up? I think it's crazy that Mick Cronin and UCLA have to play out east, which is laughable since all he's ever done is complain about having to go out east. Well, now he's going to have to win a game here. But quite honestly, UCLA defensively and what they have brought to the table here down the stretch and through that Big Ten tournament, I think UCLA is live here. There's a reason why this line is kind of stayed right around the 5.5 mark. I think UCLA and Mick Cronin can get it done. Just can't trust UCF at this point.
Fair enough. And then, of course, the University of Florida does play tonight. That's the prime matchup in the South. 9:25 Eastern. The Gators are the biggest favorite in the NCAA tournament. 35.5, total of 155.5. I mean, I don't know. I don't see Prairie View keeping this close, Joe, but I'm biased here being a Gator. What do you think?
Listen, I don't either, but 35, I mean, to win by 36 or more is just, it's unnecessary to say the least, right? And listen, Prairie View, very athletic. The back door could be wide open in the second half in this game as Florida sits everyone, and Prairie View somehow sneaks in to make it a 33-point loss and not a 36-point loss.
And then finally, Cal Baptist takes on Kansas. I see some people taking Cal Baptist here. I knew nothing about this team. I have seen some people backing them.
Yeah, and you should, because this is another one of those, dogs here. Kansas can't be trusted offensively. I mean, yes, they have Darren Peterson, but he's likely to sit out the second half. I would only take the points.
Tom Vecchio is on deck. We'll talk some baseball with him as we roll on here in this Friday edition of The Early Line.
About the expansion stuff.
Yeah, but doesn't it make a lot of sense, Kevin? So but it's 28-29. He's already talked about, I'm playing in the Olympics in 2028. Retirement isn't on KD's mind right now. Play in the Olympics in 2028, and then the 2029 season, play where it all started, baby. Seattle.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
They're going to want to lean on Kenneth Walker, especially early in the season, because Patrick Mahomes is coming off that torn ACL. Adding a high-end, proven running back next to him just gives him a little bit of time to say, hey, we're going to be run heavy early in the season as Mahomes kind of gets back up to speed, tests out that knee, and feels fully comfortable there. So I think Walker ends up being a big-time fantasy asset.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
It's not sustainable. Pitches throwing too hard and not being healthy, so that don't benefit anybody as well. So it's better to, if a guy throwing 97, why not just throw 94, 93 and learn how to pitch? And then you can last longer. So it's more about keeping the product, on the field and being on a consistent basis.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
You can put your skill and your luck to work on Kalshi. Why? They're offering $1 billion here. If you can pick the perfect bracket, sounds easy, Joe. Just pick the perfect bracket, get $1 billion.
Yeah, I think the odds of actually doing that, Donnie, are about the same if you're expecting to hit the Powerball lottery 6 times in a year.
Prediction Markets Edge, only on SportsGrid.
Well, just Shohei, for you to continue with your progression while you're away from the team with Team Japan, to be able to get into that 5th inning today, how good are you feeling just in regard to where your stuff is at and how your build-up is going?
Well, I actually didn't feel like it was my first spring training outing. I do see this as more of an extension of a live BP situation, so honestly, it didn't feel too bad going into this game.
You'll have one more, Dave Roberts said, in the Freeway Series. Is there anything you're looking to achieve just as you close out spring training to prepare for the regular season?
I was pretty happy with the pitch count today. In terms of the next outing, I do want to be better at executing in 2-strike counts. I just didn't finish off hitters as much as I wanted to.
Shohei Ohtani back on the mound for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Remains to be seen what he will be at the beginning of the season. I know what's going to be seen here on the early line. It's Tom Vecchio joining me and Joe Ranieri as we chop up some baseball talk here ahead of opening day, which I guess opening day is a week from today, but opening night is next Thursday night. So we are basically 6 days out from the first game and 7 days out from opening day. Tom, welcome back here to the early line. Let's get started putting a bow on the World Baseball Classic. As I mentioned earlier in the show, Fox is reporting that the ratings for the WBC higher than the NBA Finals. And this is for a basic game in March. So that tells you that the commissioner of Major League Baseball is taking a cue here and saying, hey, look, maybe we can add some more fuel to this fire that we got going on here, maybe with a potential mid-season tournament. But as Joe alluded to earlier in the show, that would probably eliminate the All-Star game, I would guess. That's a big moneymaker for those cities, by the way, and those teams in particular. You build a new stadium, Tom, you know that. You get an All-Star game eventually. It's big money for them. I don't know. Could they pull this off?
I think they would do it along the lines of what the NHL did, where it's like 1 year it's the World Baseball Classic, the next year it's the All-Star Game, so that the teams in those cities, to your point, can still be getting those. But it really comes down to just the involvement of the players, because mid-season, as we get to July, presumably when it would be, you're going to need to have an extended break. That's when the teams are in the playoff hunt. And now we're saying, okay, pitchers didn't want to pitch in March, but now we're saying, okay, now we need you to pitch. And do these pitchers want to have multiple games where they're throwing 100-plus pitches? Because they'd be fully stretched out in July. Do they want to add another 18, 25 innings onto their workload when their team's in a wild card race at the most important time? So we don't have involvement from pitchers and players in March. We may still not have it in July when the teams actually need them.
Yeah, I'm all for it. Just I thought that was having meaningful baseball in March was exciting, but I think it would be even better in July when there's absolutely nothing else going on here. But we do have to look ahead with the season just around the corner there, Tom. So some of these season-long prop bets here, are you looking towards any one or two players in particular?
Yeah, let's jump into Aaron Nola, under 167.5 total strikeouts for the season. I think Aaron Nola's a really good pitcher, but he's also not the same pitcher that he once was. And he's actually regressed a bit since his career in 2020 when he had a 33% strikeout rate. Every year since then, that has gone down. We've also seen his walk rate go up a little bit. So wasting some pitches is never a good thing. Last year, he missed a little bit of time on the IL. It wasn't an elbow and arm thing. It was an ankle thing. We know that the Phillies are going to be cautious bringing Zach Wheeler back. We know that Andrew Painter is likely to start in the rotation. I'm just a little bit concerned that they don't want to stretch Nola too much and push him too far, knowing that they're already starting the season not with a full deck of cards with Wheeler. So, Nola's a good pitcher. He's going to be serviceable for a lot of years. He's just not that same dominant strikeout pitcher he once was. Also want to talk about Vinny Pasquantino. His home run prop this season is sitting at 25.5. I kind of want to bypass that and go to 30 plus, which you can get a plus 150 over on FanDuel. Home runs are variable. We know that. So I want to jump up and try and grab some plus money. Royals are moving the fences in this year. That's a big story for them. We'd love to see that. Vinny P last year, he was 29th in the league when it comes to pull air rate, which is obviously fantastic. Also, if you dig into some of the deeper metrics on Baseball Savant, you actually look at Vinny P in terms of the expected home runs and his actual home runs. he had the second largest negative differential when it comes to actual home runs from his expected home runs, sitting at negative 3.5. The person with the most or the highest differential was his teammate Sal Perez. So the fences being moved in is going to be a boom for the Kansas City Royals, and Vinny P is going to take advantage of that. So I like him for 30 plus this year, plus 150.
Only if there's espresso machines in the Kansas City dugout. That's the only way that this prop comes in. Then I'm going 40 plus at plus 270. I'm just kidding. All right. Look, the great thing about sports betting that has changed over the last several years is that in the past you had to make your pick and then you basically couldn't change it. But now the odds just fluctuate constantly. So, Tom, the season's going to open up next week, and you obviously will have the opportunity to change your opinion throughout. But let's get your opinion on some of the American League winners, the National League winners, and then nationally the World Series. So we'll start off. You know what, guys? Let's start off with the American League here, and then we'll finish with the World Series. I'm not gonna go backwards here. So there you go. American League got the Yankees, the Mariners, the Red Sox, the Blue Jays, and the Tigers. Generally, the team that gets to the World Series and loses doesn't have the same success the following year. So that's a tough one for me on Toronto. The Tigers added Framber Valdez to the top of that rotation with Tarek Skubal, but if they struggle, would they even trade Skubal and learn their lesson from Ohtani a couple of years ago? Angels held on to him. What was that all about? So, Tom, are you in on any of these teams in the AL, or is it someone that's not on the board?
I can't say that I'm in on any of the AL East teams strictly for the fact that I think all three are going to make the playoffs, which means two of them are going to be playing each other in the first round of the wild card. So I think we're going to get three AL teams coming out of into the playoffs. I think from an odds perspective, I think the Tigers are fine, but they're still missing a piece in their lineup and one other pitcher. I like the Rangers to make the playoffs this year. I don't think they'll win the AL, but from a betting perspective, the Tigers would be my pick.
Nationally, Tom?
It's kind of along the same lines where I'm willing to take a shot on the Braves because we're getting the longest odds on them. I think there's going to be some attrition at the top. I think the Mets are being booked as too heavy of a favorite, considering they made some good improvements to their offseason, not great ones. I like the Cubs to win the Central and the Braves as a bit of a longer shot. They just need to stay healthy this year.
Let me just show you the World Series odds. Biggest steam is on Seattle at 12-1 right now.
Yeah, this is where I think Philly and Atlanta still have some value. You're getting them at a longer price. We're going to see some cannibalism at the top between the Yankees and the Mariners taking each other out. I think there's some good value on the Braves to the Phillies still.
All right, Tom, have a great day. Thanks again.
Of course.
and I'm hoping they've grown as basketball players. The only thing I'd like to leave the fellow coaches with, just have fun. March Madness, I could be out of coaching next year. I really can be. You're 73. And I want to have the greatest time of my life. I'm going to coach this game as if it's the last game I'll ever coach. Then if we're good enough to win, it's going to be here. And if it's next year, I'm going to coach next year as if it's the last year I'm going to be on earth. And that's the way I coach. But I also appreciate the blessings I've been given by being allowed to coach this long. Because it is a blessing to be at St. John's coaching where you grew up. It's a blessing.
And we'll see how St. John's does in the NCAA tournament after a great run. Speaking of great runs, the story of the day in college basketball may have been High Point, but the second biggest story of the day had to be what Siena almost pulled off against Duke. That could be a team to look for in the future. Siena led the game almost wire to wire with Duke, the #1 seed, coming back. They did not end up covering that huge spread, of course. And so are there silver linings in a game where you do not win? Let's find out and hear from the head coach of Siena, Jerry McNamara.
I've been doing this a long time. I don't think I've ever been more proud of any group of kids I've ever been around. I think the world and college basketball saw what I've been so grateful and thankful to be around all season. Group of kids that love each other, that compete at the highest level, play for each other. We got off to a great start offensively, and second half when they switched to zone, it slowed us down a little bit. But I went back and watched every time they've been scored on this season, this past week, and you go game by game, and there's stretches where they just don't give up points. It's why they're who they are. I said after Atlantic City, I'm a proud coach. I'm still a damn proud coach.
All right, Joe. Siena with a silver lining win. But is that going to be the case today for Furman when they face off against UConn? And we know Hurley's going to have that team ready today to play. The 15 versus the 2. It's a 10 p.m. Eastern start. So if you can stay up for this game, you'll get to watch a 2-hour affair between these two teams where the Huskies are 20.5-point favorites. Total of 136.5. Any lean on this game at all?
Well, that's the problem. Look at the total, Craig. 136.5. And you want me to believe that UConn, who is only covered, by the way, 3 games out of their last 14 in which they were a favorite of double digits. I can't get there. I mean, UConn has burned money this year as a double-digit favorite. And listen, Furman's got a lot of size. They got shooting. And with as fewer possessions as this total is telling us we're going to get, I'll take the points here. I got no problem taking the 20.5 points.
Meanwhile, the late game, the nightcap tonight here in South Florida, Joe, is everyone watching the University of Miami play out west tonight as 1.5 favorites over Missouri. The Hurricanes, Joe, a month ago looked like they had no shot at making the NCAA tournament, but they came on strong at the end. Missouri probably more consistent over the course of the season, but Miami the hotter team entering the tournament. Do you have an opinion?
Yeah, I like Miami in this spot here because they're not ridiculously reliant on the 3. They play better basketball in the half court than most. They can get out in transition, and they've got with Renaud and Mitchell, they've got monster guys that can control the rebounding and the paint, and it's one of the best coaching jobs that we have seen all year long with Miami here, but I like them at such a short number here. I can't trust Dennis Gates in Missouri. I don't think they have enough interior presence to get it done, so Miami for me.
Do you think that the games that they put these teams from the East Coast out west, Joe, does that make a disadvantage for them? I mean, the body clock to me is only early in the day, right? Like when they have to start off early?
Yeah, well, when they have to do it, I mean, but I think they'll be fine because they've had enough time now to get assimilated out there and get it done, Craig. So I think they'll be ready one way or the other. I think it's going to be one of the more entertaining games, by the way. It's definitely kind of must watch, even though it's on late.
Headlines coming up next. Kevin Walsh joins us, so does Coach Young. You're watching the early line here on this Friday March Madness edition of the show. We'll be right back.
About the expansion stuff.
Yeah, but doesn't it make a lot of sense, Kevin? So, but it's 28-29. He's already talked about, I'm playing in the Olympics in 2028. Retirement isn't on KD's mind right now. Play in the Olympics in 2028, and then the 2029 season, play where it all started, baby. Seattle.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid.
They're going to want to lean on Kenneth Walker, especially early in the season, because Patrick Mahomes is coming off that torn ACL. Adding a high-end, proven running back next to him just gives him a little bit of time to say, hey, we're going to be run heavy early in the season as Mahomes kind of gets back up to speed, tests out that knee, and feels fully comfortable there. So I think Walker ends up being a big-time fantasy asset.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
It's not sustainable. Pitches throwing too hard and not being healthy, so that don't benefit anybody as well. So it's better to, if a guy throwing 97, why not just throw 94, 93 and learn how to pitch? And then you can last longer. So it's more about keeping the product, on the field and being on a consistent basis.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio. Only on SportsGrid.
You can put your skill and your luck to work on Kalshi. Why? They're offering $1 billion here. If you can pick the perfect bracket, sounds easy, Joe. Just pick the perfect bracket, get $1 billion.
Yeah, I think the odds of actually doing that, Donnie, are about the same if you're expecting to hit the Powerball lottery 6 times in a year.
Prediction Markets Edge. Only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back. It's our second hour of the early line here, up until 9 a.m. Eastern. I'm Craig Mission for Donnie Rightside. Joe Ranieri is by my side for the next hour. Let's get to some of the headlines here on the early lineup. We'll start off with the Detroit Pistons. As I mentioned earlier in the show, good news, bad news. Good news, Cade Cunningham will play for the Pistons in the playoffs. Bad news, he will not have a chance to prepare for those playoffs. He's been diagnosed with a mild lung pneumothorax issue and will miss 8 games. He'll be reevaluated in a couple of weeks. Playoffs begin April 18th, and so, Joe, as I mentioned earlier in the show, it just kind of depends on how you feel about the bottom half of the Eastern Conference, because Detroit will be at the top half, and they'll be heavily favored, whoever they're facing, with or without Cunningham in the first round.
It was such a weird thing, too. I mean, it was there was the game against the Wizards where I think Trey Johnson, gave him, ran into him and he absorbed the shot into his ribs. Then the rib collapsed. I mean, the whole thing was just absolutely, crazy. It's not something that you would think is a common injury, but it does a couple of things, Craig, because it absolutely puts Detroit's as being the best team in the East and the best shot to actually make a run at whoever comes out of the West. I think that's in jeopardy, not to mention all of a sudden now he was the favorite for quite a while to make a run at the MVP race. And now looks like he's in jeopardy of missing more games and not be eligible. So a lot of stuff trickling down here from the fact that the Pistons are losing Cade Cunningham, and maybe none bigger than the idea that I don't think they can win without him. So hopefully they get him back sooner rather than later. Otherwise, there's going to be an awful lot of Boston future money, Cavs future money, and dare I say, Knicks future money coming to hit the market soon.
Yeah, Jason Tatum back for Boston puts them in the driver's seat, you would think, in the East without Cunningham. Meanwhile, the driver's seat for Major League Baseball has to be the World Baseball Classic, highest ratings of all time, most attended of all time, passing the NBA's NBA Finals in terms of ratings. So Major League Baseball's considering at least doing a mid-season tournament, Joe. These things would have to sort of work themselves out, and it wouldn't certainly replace the World Baseball Classic in 3 years. But for now, just an idea. As we know, this will have to be collectively bargained, too, in the next agreement, which is coming up after the year.
Yeah, I mean, listen, go figure. When you get nations involved and guys that, players that buy into it, Craig, more than anything else. And that is exactly what you got. The fans will watch if they believe the players are invested. That's the problem with the NBA and the NBA All-Star Game, all those types of things. No, the NBA Cup, nobody believes that those players are invested. In Major League Baseball, those players bought in, so did the fans, and it looks like, I guess, the reports of Major League Baseball not being interesting or on its way out the door are just maybe a little premature here at this point.
Could be the biggest rise for baseball in a long time to this point. Unfortunately, there is a fall to report, and that's for the Toronto Blue Jays. Trey Savage, the young pitcher who came on at the end of last year and pitched in the World Series, has a shoulder impingement. This is his throwing shoulder. Joe, I did think it was a little peculiar back in the early part of the spring, about 3 weeks ago, when they were like, yeah, we're going to take our time with the Savage, wasn't really pitching in games. And look, they're under no obligation to tell us anything, but this does now make some sense here. It appears he's going to miss some time.
Yeah, well, they were going to have to say something because eventually, once the season starts, everyone's going to be like, I'm sorry, is Savage not a starter? Like, what is going on? But there's no reason to rush him back from any of this. So either they're being extremely cautious or there's something seriously wrong. So unfortunately, you're right, Greg. I think only time will tell, but there's no reason, I think, to rush him back at this point with Toronto anyway.
He wasn't going to throw 200 innings in his second season regardless. Right. Joe makes a really good point there. Yes. Okay, in case you missed it, yesterday, the biggest upsets of the day were before you went to sleep. Okay, so you did okay there. You didn't miss anything overnight. I'm just being honest with you. If you went chalk overnight, you won all of your bracket games and you won all of your bets. Yep. But if you bet the chalk between Wisconsin and High Point, you lost in a very big way because High Point is advancing now to the next round. They are the 12 seed. They beat Wisconsin 83-82. And the bigger question as we move forward this morning, Joe, is how far can High Point go? The 12 seed generally doesn't get past the next round after they beat the 5. Is High Point one of those teams that has a shot?
Well, it's so funny because this is some camps will say, oh, we get this every year. Of course, there's always going to be one or two. And we usually only hear it during tournament time. But we have been hearing about how these mid-majors play nobody and they don't deserve to be. We've been hearing about this because of Miami of Ohio, it feels like, all season long. And Miami of Ohio will have another chance to do something here, which is going to make the Bruce Pearls and the elitists and these, Power 4 and 5 snobs very uncomfortable. We saw High Point do it. We saw VCU do it against the Blue Bloods. We might have one or two more. I think the High Points of the world are very much in it to win it. And I think more so this year with the NIL and the parity it's created. Yeah, I think there's an opportunity here for them to win at least one, maybe two more games here.
We've seen the 16 seed beat the 1, but we never could have projected that Siena would have beaten Duke. Yeah. And folks, let me not scare you. They didn't win. So you're still alive if you took Duke to win the championship. But my gosh, your thought process on taking Duke, and not yours, Joe, anybody's thought process right now has to be shaken a little bit. Boozer had 22 and 13. But, I mean, Duke looked nothing like a championship team yesterday.
Yeah, and you know what? It's a big wake-up call, and they got lucky because all of the players admitted that they thought it was going to be a cakewalk, Craig. Like they were just going to show up, roll the ball out, and Siena was just going to lay down, and they were going to run roughshod over them. And guess what? Yeah, that was a totally different second half for Duke. They woke up, but I can assure you, I don't think we're going to get that the rest of the way through from Duke here. They won't be taking anybody lightly moving forward.
If you bet McNeese against Tennessee, you may have won. you may have lost. It just depended on what the line was. This almost landed right on the number, but the Commodores are moving on. They beat McNeese and win for the first time in the tournament since 2012, 78-68. They improved to 27-8 on the season. So Vanderbilt gets the win, and so does Phil Martelli, who certainly was happy to see all of the fans and all of the reporters show up and watch his team win.
I just told the guys that game was the perfect microcosm of who this group has been. They've been resilient as much as any group I've ever been around. And we've done it all year. Our second game of the year, we went down 17 against Utah State, came all the way back, tied the game. And I knew right then and there, I said, we got something here. We got something because we have that resilience, and you can't be successful without it. And they've shown it time and time and time again. And, you know, today on the biggest stage was another one of those days. And, you know, and then for everybody else watching, right, like this is March. This is what March does. And, you know, I'm really proud of these guys. I've said it a number of times, like they make a mediocre coach look good, and it's because of these guys, and really proud of them.
Again, questions for student athletes only first, and we're going to start in the back right.
And also last night, St. Louis put up 100 on Georgia. Joe, what was the most impressive performance for you last night of the very late games, meaning that folks are waking up this morning and they probably have no idea what happened? I mean, that is the dynamic of the tournament. Some of these games end very late on the East Coast.
Yeah, listen, Gonzaga not winning by 20, which is what their line was to Kennesaw State. Kennesaw State was able to slow that game down enough to keep it within double digits, which was impressive there for a little while. Gonzaga, I think, only won by 9. So, but you win and you move on here. But Houston, I think, might have been the least surprising one as they handed Idaho and the Vandals quite the smackdown last night. So not a whole lot of surprises is the big takeaway late night.
Yeah, when I woke up this morning preparing for the show, I was like, whoo, missed no upsets. All right. Kevin Walsh will join us coming up. You're watching The Early Line on SportsGrid. All right, welcome back to the early line here on Sports Grid. I'm Craig Mish along with Joe Ranieri, and joining us now because he's been working so much and, just working the candle at both ends here. Kevin Walsh was going to be on the show with us, but unfortunately couldn't make it, so we made an AI version of him to join us here on the show. And so it looks like him. We did a great job reproducing him, but he is with us again here on the program. Kevin, this is a fun time of the year, but let's just be honest with everyone out there. For hosts like us, it is taxing. There's a lot of games, there's a lot of breakdowns, and in order to catch the entire NCAA tournament, you got to be watching until like 1 o'clock in the morning East Coast. That's the bad news. The good news is the games were in hand late last night, right?
Yeah, they were. It was really a matter of, was Gonzaga going to mess this up, especially now that, again, with respect to Texas, it's probably going to be a shorter point spread, or a bigger, I should say, now that they're going to play the 11 in Texas than what would have been a 6-seed matchup against Dibanza and BYU. So, no, look, late night, we had some routes here. The big upset came very, very early in the day. Like you said, Craig, it was High Point who took out Wisconsin. I remember someone, definitely not going to name names, Joe Ranieri, who came on yesterday and was like, obviously, Kev, High Point shouldn't even show up to the game. I was like, respectfully, I think they should probably play it. And it ended up being a pretty fun basketball game.
Yeah, definitely so. It's unfortunate, too, because all the money Joe lost, he has to stay in New York now and can't come back to Florida. He's got no money to fly back there. He's got to Uber over to a train. Okay, so the game of the day, I don't know that this fits the game of the day, honestly, but here's what happens in this game between Alabama and Hofstra. I'm going to keep it real here, Kevin. Alabama wins. We don't discuss the player being out and arrested. If they lose, that's the entire story. Is that as simplistic as I can be with this? 11.5-point favorites.
I guess my pushback, Craig, is if they win, we then go to, okay, is he coming back now? Because it's Alabama. Most programs, we wouldn't even bother, right? But we're like, okay, so he's gone now. That's fine. But is this guy going to be back for Sunday, or if they win a Sweet 16, and are in that spot, could we see Aiden Holloway there? With respect to this game here, I think it's actually one of those spots where if you are in places you can actually get access to college basketball player props, it becomes very interesting how you try and take advantage of the Aiden Holloway situation. I think a lot of people are going to look to bet LeBaron Philon, rightfully so. He's a star, potential lottery pick, but those numbers are going to be heavily adjusted. I would keep your eyes on Latrell Wrightsell. Not that Wrightsell's some sleeper. He led this Alabama team, or leads this Bama team, in made threes. He's played twice without Holloway this year and attempted 6 threes in one of the games and 14 in the other. Wrightsell to make 3 threes is at about plus money, so that's one way I'm going to look to bet the absence of Aiden Holloway.
Now we also have...
I can't think of it.
Oh, go ahead, Joe.
No, I was going to say, I can't think of anything worse to trust than Matt Painter teams at this point in the season, outside of Greg Gard teams with Wisconsin, apparently. But Matt Painter's teams usually figure out ways to disappoint. Is Queens live here today, at least to stay within this number?
It's funny. Yesterday I talked about betting North Dakota, which did not work out. They lost by 25. But as a 16.5-point dog, it's like, I don't think they have any chance to win, which they didn't, obviously. I say that to say this is a 10-point higher spread. I'm not only on Queens. I think there's a world it happens. I think there's a world that this Queens team actually wins the game. Now, Purdue should really just score every single possession. Queens cannot guard. It's crazy that a defense this bad made the NCAA tournament. They're about 100 spots worse when we talk about defensive efficiency than the next closest team that is in this dance. But all Queens wants to do is shoot threes. And Purdue, for some reason, is like, hey, why don't you go ahead and shoot threes? And that's just where you add variance in, right? Like, again, like we talked about yesterday with the High Point Wisconsin thing, is if Wisconsin goes cold and High Point can score, and they won the 3-point battle 15-9. And not to turn a exciting game into something boring, that's about it, right? You win a 3-point battle by 6, that's an 18-point, advantage you give yourself. I think Queens covers this game. I really feel strongly that they cover the 25.5. It's worth $1 or $2, I think, as I see Craig is looking at me like, no, it's not.
No,
Get back
I'm
to bed.
I want to go over real quick. I listen. You guys know way more about this than I do. Let me be clear on that. But I can do research. So Queens University lost to West Georgia, Central Arkansas, and something named Bellarmine. Queens, Georgia lost to. Do you guys even know? Have you ever heard? Honestly, don't fake it with me here. Have you ever heard of Bellarmine College? Honestly.
Actually, yes. I would have told you if it was a school that the answer was no. I will also tell you that Purdue, while having...
I know, because it's Purdue. Yes, I agree with that. But Queens College has no business being in this. No business whatsoever being in this.
They absolutely don't. They're bad.
Is this the worst team in the tournament?
Somehow, no. It's the worst defense in the tournament, Craig.
Okay.
It's the worst defense in the tournament. By a lot. I want everyone to be very, very clear about something, okay? It's the tournament. So it happens. When Purdue scores 100, people are like, Kev, you're an idiot. Well, not if Queens
it's okay.
can find their way to 75. That's all
wasn't
we
you
need.
anyway. It's the AI version of you today, so it doesn't matter. You can be wrong on that. It's okay. All right, St. John's, Northern Iowa, 5-12 here. Crashing line a little to NIU here. I guess maybe because of the 5-12 yesterday, Kevin. Is that what's going on?
A lot of people just seemingly like the spot for Northern Iowa here. I was talking with someone yesterday who kind of made the point, you don't really see a lot of 12-loss 12 seeds, right? Like High Point yesterday was a 4-loss basketball team. Northern Iowa getting a lot of respect, not just on the line, but in this spot here. I'm kind of zagging against the grain a little in this spot. I bet the over at 131.5. Both of these teams lean on their defense. Northern Iowa is one of the 5 slowest teams in college basketball. But 131.5 is too low for a St. John's game, so I played the over, fellas.
All right, Kevin Walsh with us here on the show. He combed his hair for our show. We appreciate that. We'll be right back with more here on The Early Line. Don't go away.
About the expansion stuff.
Yeah, but doesn't it make a lot of sense, Kevin? So, but it's 28-29. He's already talked about, I'm playing in the Olympics in 2028. Retirement isn't on KD's mind right now. Play in the Olympics in 2028, and then the 2029 season, play where it all started, baby. Seattle.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
They're going to want to lean on Kenneth Walker, especially early in the season, because Patrick Mahomes is coming off that torn ACL. Adding a high-end, proven running back next to him just gives him a little bit of time to say, hey, we're going to be run heavy early in the season as Mahomes kind of gets back up to speed, tests out that knee, and feels fully comfortable there. So I think Walker ends up being a big-time fantasy asset.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
It's not sustainable. Pitches throwing too hard and not being healthy, so that don't benefit anybody as well. So it's better to, if a guy throwing 97, why not just throw 94, 93 and learn how to pitch? And then you can last longer. So it's more about keeping the product, on the field and being on a consistent basis.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio. Only on SportsGrid.
You can put your skill and your luck to work on Kalshi. Why? They're offering $1 billion here. If you can pick the perfect bracket, sounds easy, Joe. Just pick the perfect bracket, get $1 billion.
Yeah, I think the odds of actually doing that, Donnie, are about the same if you're expecting to hit the Powerball lottery 6 times in a year.
Prediction Markets Edge. Only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to the early line here on SportsGrid. As we told you earlier in the show, there's a chance that baseball turns the halfway point of the season over to a mid-season tournament. We just got done with the World Baseball Classic. Nolan McLean is back in St. Lucie with the Mets. Here he is on starting the WBC final.
Going into that start, what it would be like, looking forward to it, feeling ready for it. What was the experience actually like compared to what you expected?
Yeah, I mean, it's some of the most fun I've had playing the game and just being a part of the game. Just talking to my wife about, like, obviously in season you're wanting to win all the time, but I've never felt like being on the rail in the dugout that intense before, and it was awesome.
When Harper hit that home run, where were you and what was your reaction?
So me and Clay were standing next to each other, and Clay said, "It'd be a pretty cool homer right here." Next pitch, he gets into it, and I'm standing on top of the rail, and it just kind of blacked out from there. Honestly, I don't know what happened after that, but I was definitely on the field at some point.
I mean, look, I thought McLean did a good job, Joe. You know what? We've sort of entered this era of the business that you and I do, of just not being satisfied with anything in sports. We've entered the we have to complain about something era. It's kind of amazing to me with how good the World Baseball Classic was and how the games happened and the final, you know, like as close as it gets, that we still are trying to find complaints with Mason Miller and these other things. Like, why can't we just put a bow on the WBC? It was as good as any event we've ever seen. It was as fun as any event we've ever seen. The ratings come in. They're better than the NBA Finals. But, you know, there are some people out there, oh, how did Nolan McLean start the final? I guess that's just what we do at this point, right? It's like just finding people just like to complain about something. I thought the WBC was close to as perfect as possible.
I thought it was fantastic to have meaningful baseball in the month of March. Craig, we should just be happy with that because now, well, we get to roll right into the start of Major League Baseball and not acting like we don't know anything about baseball because we just got, 10 days of it. That was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't get it. Okay, so now it's time for us to go into our poll of the day, but we call it Fade the Public. All right, you can check out our poll on X. A lot more people voting today than yesterday, which is always a good sign. Which upset was more impressive yesterday? High Point over Wisconsin or VCU over North Carolina? Answers possible. Of course, High Point, VCU, or there's more to come. Joe, I will tell you this. I will say this. I know most people voted for High Point. Do you think, I'm going to say this, I think there is a bigger upset to come today in the NCAA tournament. Do you or no?
There could be. I mean, listen, High Point beating Wisconsin, yes, was definitely fantastic. But, it felt like they were in that game, and we were waiting for the wheels to fall off of Wisconsin. VCU was down by as many as 19 to North Carolina in that second half, Greg. I mean, there was legit no reason to think anything other than North Carolina being North Carolina. And before we know it, we're in overtime and they lose. So I would think VCU would get my vote there simply from the sheer ridiculousness of how many they had to come from behind to get done. But yes, this could just be getting started. We could see another monster upset here today.
All right, let's get to our best bets. All right, Joe, I'll start with you. Who do you like today? What's your best bet in the tournament?
Well, listen, I may be sitting in New York City right now, but I am going back to Miami there, and I am taking the Hurricanes late night in St. Louis, taking on Missouri. Now, something tells me there might be a few Missouri fans in the crowd here tonight, but I don't care. It's virtually a pick-em price. I love Malik Reneau. I love Trey Donaldson. I love Coach Lucas and what he has done. He's obviously never been a head coach here, but he's going to have an opportunity to get his first tournament win, and hopefully it's going to be a long career for him at Miami. He's going to rack up a bunch of these, but I like Miami. 8-2 in true road games this season. I think they get it done, even though the crowd might be a little bit pro-Mizzou tonight. I think Miami, the Hurricanes, get it done.
I filled out a bracket with Gonzaga getting to the Final Four, so I'm certainly going to back them against Texas tomorrow. 5.5-point favorites. Texas's magic of winning the play-in, and then against BYU comes to an end this weekend, and the Zags end up covering the spread. We'll take a quick timeout here on the early line, and we'll come back with more.
Well, still, even though he gave up that home run, Tom, you know the number's going to be there. If he stays healthy, who's touching that guy?
Well, you mentioned him. The only player I've interest in betting on for the AL Cy Young this year would be Brian Wu. And it's a combination of everything. It's a combination of the odds. It's a combination of his underlying skill set, where I believe he's trending in terms of his career.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
On the Thunder side, while they haven't had their stars totally for the entire regular season, they're still 3-4 games ahead of where the Spurs are, and that says a lot. Without SGA, without J-Dub, who's missed a large chunk of the year, Chet missed some time, for them to be still good enough to keep winning and stacking these wins, it means something, and it's actually building confidence for those others.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Put Zach Branch on the Buffalo Bills on the football field at the same time with Cook and these wide receivers, and you have Branch set up in a slot in motion and stuff, and you put that speed. I want a game difference maker. DJ Moore's not a difference maker, right? He helps, he's good, right? But it's not that game changer. But to me, Kevin, they need game changers on the defensive side of the football.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.